Storm got nerfed and Toxin is here. Let's see how our latest changes to Marvel Snap are impacting the metagame in today's Best Decks Roundup. We kick off my Jeff's picks this week with a perfect deck for cleaning all your weekend missions up in one go, featuring Toxin and Agent Venom inside of Werewolf Bounce. This particular variation of Bounce has been the best feeling into all of the copies of Cosmo that are running around in the metagame right now. The reason for this is twofold. First is that Werewolf by Night will appropriately jump into a Cosmo lane even if the on reveal there gets suppressed, meaning we can still scale that threat even if we're locked out of on reveals in some locations. And Iron Man, obviously stellar with Agent Venom, also doesn't care about the dog and lets us get absolutely massive numbers. This deck is effectively using Black Swan to jump the dog around the board strategically on the last turn, while also plunking Iron Man down in another spot to win two of the lanes. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of playing tech cards in Bounce, even if it can be powerful, so this has definitely been the best and cleanest feelings Bounce list in my personal experience. As far as higher tier substitutions go, Toxin, Black Swan, Agent Venom, and Werewolf I think are all pretty important to this deck list, but you do have some wiggle room on your one drops. Spider Ham substitutes for Iceman very reasonably, and Silver Sable could be something like Hawkeye. I'd like to take a quick minute to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Into the AM. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's add about 30,000 words to this ad read by showing you the incredible range of Into the AM shirts that I have in my own closet here at home that you see me wearing almost every single day in the videos that I make here. Into the AM makes an incredible range of premium clothing that feels great to wear and looks awesome. I get comments on my live stream and in YouTube comments all of the time when I'm out and about in public wearing them. People always comment on the wonderful designs that they feature. If you're someone that enjoys expressing yourself in the clothing that you're wearing and you enjoy high quality products, I cannot recommend Into the AM enough as someone who has been wearing their products for years now. If you're someone who enjoys saving some money while shopping for excellent things, Into the AM is having a sale now through October 31st. You can save up to 50% off on everything they've got site-wide. Be sure to check out my link in the video description down below to get in on that action. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the deck list, shall we? Misery Thors is my second Jeff's pick this week. It is my preferred way to kick over opposing sandcastles with powerful tech cards like Shadow King and Killmonger. This deck list gets stats on the board through the Thors package as well as Miss Marvel, and then Misery can kind of serve a double purpose. It can give us extra copies of stats by doubling up Hood's trigger, but it can also make Mjolnir and Stormbreaker happen twice on the last turn, giving you lots of stats that's difficult for the opponent to keep up with. Armor kind of serves double duty in this deck list. It can disrupt opposing decks like Destroy. It can protect our Thor and Beta Ray Bill from getting blown up by Shang-Chi, but it can also protect our on reveals from Misery, who notably does not have to destroy the card she's re-triggering in order to make their effect happen again. Quake is the last card I'd like to call out here, a really underplayed Marvel Snap card where when you have priority going into the last turn, you can often ruin people's day with a variety of locations. Important higher series cards here are Miss Marvel and Beta Ray Bill for consistently getting stats on the board. Misery, I think you could even have wiggle room to play something like Odin, and Nocturne's just a generically good 3 energy card that could easily sub out for Luke Cage, Mobius, or even something like Red Guardian. My last Jeff's pick is playing a ton of Marvel Snap cards that I personally enjoy. It can win with doubled Hit Monkeys or doubled She-Hulks, but most potently, this deck list is definitely a testament to the fact that if one Shadow King is good in this metagame, two must be a whole lot better. We can disrupt the opponent with that, or we could put stats on the board in a variety of ways, including Black Swan, making all of your Hydra Bobs and Titanias completely free on the last turn of the game. As far as higher series cards go, I would go so far as to say Hydra Bob's probably the only one you can replace here, and I definitely would never recommend spending your tokens on something as narrow as him. Easily substitute him for something like Rocket Raccoon or Silver Sable if they're in your collection. Our high potential category kicks off this week with a Zabu Scar deck featuring our latest buff card in Typhoid Mary. For those who aren't familiar with my roundups, high potential deck lists have smaller samples on untap but have promising performance inside of that sample. They could be the next breakout thing, or they could end up falling short as their sample size grows, but I'm always excited to find out which. This deck list has a sweet proactive game plan with all of its 4/10s making Scar cheaper, and then alongside your 2 or 4 energy Scar on the last turn of the game, you pair it with tech cards like Armor, Cosmo, or Shadow King to disrupt your opponent's game plan in the best possible way. This deck is only playing 2 higher series cards in Scar and Collapsidian, but I fear neither of them are really replaceable without lowering the power level of the deck a significant degree. Up next, we have Invisible Woman powered Sarah Control, whose high potential performance is almost assuredly attributed to the fact that I would wager this deck is absolutely feasting on bounce decks that have been popular with Toxin's release this week. Invisible Woman with Killmonger or something like Shadow King behind her means that even good bounce players can't play around having priority on the board because your cards are always going to flip up last. This deck list also gets to have a reasonable proactive game plan thanks to Agent Venom, Mysterio, Bishop, and Gwenpool all pumping out pretty solid amounts of stats at the end of the game. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room in the higher series cards this deck is playing. They kind of have unique roles, and you're going to be missing chunks of stats if you're replacing things like US Agent or Gwenpool. Our last high potential deck list this week is Black Knight Sarah, which has had reasonable stats in the past but fell out of favor for a variety of reasons. The recent buff to Typhoid Mary makes its Scar backup plan a good bit more consistent, and it's got promising metrics on Untapped after the recent OTA changes. This deck list gets to leverage potent tech cards like Shadow King and isn't be able to put absolutely massive numbers into play with Black Knight and Ghost Rider alongside the Infidot. As far as higher series cards go, Scar and Black Knight, I would say, are the ones that are not negotiable, with US Agent and Valentina giving you a little bit of wiggle room to play other 2 energy cards, such as Maximus, that can give you stats at the end of the game in a flurry. Up next, we have the Agent Venom Cosmo Iron Man Good Stuff deck list, which is not only the most popular deck post OTA per the Untapped metrics, but it's also the best performing. This deck is the best deck in Marvel Snap right now, in my opinion, and I think it's one of the best decks we've had in a long while. This deck list genuinely feels like it does not have any truly bad matchups, in my opinion. Any tech cards that would give you meaningful counterplay to it get shut down by 1 Cosmo or even 2 thanks to Mystique copying it up. And Iron Man paired with Mystique and things like Speed allow this deck to generate really massive stat lines thanks to Bast and Agent Venom giving those cards base power. If you want to be winning lots of games of Marvel Snap right now, I think this one is a phenomenal choice. Up next, we have Bounce, which is the second most popular deck tracked on Untapped behind the Cosmo Good Stuff deck list. It's worth noting that in the wake of Toxin's release, there is a lot of variation and people trying different things, but these 12 cards up on your screen right now had the best performance, the 200 plus game sample size when I looked on Untapped to put things together for this video. A noteworthy call out is that I think Iceman is an excellent disruptive 1 energy card, especially when you're picking your stuff up and putting it back down. I will say, when I played this particular deck list, I found the Cosmo matchups to be particularly challenging, which is why I focused on a Werewolf by Night build inside of my just picks at the start of this video, but there's no denying that these 12 cards felt really cohesive and powerful in the variety of other matchups where the on-reveal dog was not present. Up next is Discard, which was the 3rd most popular deck tracked on Untapped behind Bounce, but it is noteworthy that this deck was not putting up a strong performance, and I would not consider it a top performer by the metrics I usually set for that classification. Scorn is present in most of the discard decks being played, but there's not a lot of variation overall to this archetype, with most of them playing 10 or 11 of the cards that I currently have on your screen. Finally, Destroys the 4th most popular deck tracked on Untapped, with the only noteworthy bit this week being that Agony is outperforming Hulkbuster in that same slot with the other 11 cards by a pretty significant margin, so it looks like Marvel Snap's latest release might have a permanent home. Well, I have a handful of decks that I highlighted at the start of this video that definitely feel reasonable and have brought me some joy while playing Marvel Snap. I definitely think the current format feels more difficult to brew in than some of Marvel Snap's better ones that we've had in the past. Cosmo being upwards of 30% of the metagame stifles a lot of deck building, ingenuity, and innovation, and I do think the Cosmo Good Stuff Agent Venom deck is one of the more oppressive best decks we've had in a little while. If you think you've broken it with something I didn't cover in today's roundup, I'd love to know in the comments section down below. And as always, if you enjoyed my breakdown, be sure to smash that like button. I'd like to give a final shout out to Into the AM, makers of all of the wonderful shirts like I am wearing right now, for sponsoring today's video as well. Their stuff is fantastic, so be sure to check them out in the video description down below for a link to their fantastic stuff with their sale that's going on right now.